Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The SparkFile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, your one-stop for creative inspiration.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're an OG listener, welcome back, Sparkler. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are good questions, and we've got answers, baby cams.
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all of your inspirations and fascinations.
And here's the deal. We are makers who make all kinds of things.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, or you want to be making stuff all the time, you know the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry.
So we're on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity. Things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a catalog of daily observations and life's highlights.
Or a beautiful musical legacy.
Every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark File and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
And if you're not careful, you might make all the things you've always wanted to make. So without further ado, let's open up the
Spark File.
Hi, baby Cams.
Hi.
How you doing,
Virtual
girlie?
hugging you.
Oh, you know, if we were in the same room, we wouldn't be hugging right now. We wouldn't. We'd be separated, so we'd have nice microphone sound separation.
I know. After a nice long hug, though.
After a nice long hug and a deep kiss on the mouth. JK, JK. I have well-documented boundary issues, so there you go. How you doing, Cams?
Hi. I'm doing good. Doing well. I guess well. Grammatically correct. I'm doing very well.
I'm grammatically correct, and I'm
We are
loving
nothing if not grammatically correct here on the Spark File.
Is that right? I don't know. I'm pretty well. I know there are a lot of people that are chilling. I am not one of those people. I am working hard and just really trying to be of service and hustling. And so I feel like I sleep well at night knowing that I've put in good, hard, long days of work and hopefully I've been of service to people. So I'm good. I'm happy and I'm healthy and I'm grateful for that health.
That's the best. That's the essential right there.
That is it. That is everything right now. And you?
Also hustling, just hustling.
Every day you're snuffling. Yes.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Trying to force myself, to get out of the chair and away from the computer at least a few times a day.
Ooh.
and just try to walk around, stretch it out,
Yeah,
That's
I've
it.
been trying in my classes that I lead online and also in my life to rest my eyeballs
Yes.
and to lead the, just different participants in exercises to like rest eyeballs, because I feel like our eyes are doing so much more work
They are.
and so
There's
much
no
more
doubt.
screen time than they would typically. And so I'm just really trying to take care. And
Mhm.
and so I think today, while we're, when I don't have to be looking at my screen, I'm going to do an experiment with visualizing you telling me this story, sharing this spark.
I like it.
Yeah, I do
I'm
too.
going to give you a spark. Yes, I like that idea.
I'm going to
of
give you
just
such a spark.
Such a spark. You don't even know. But I like the idea of just closing your eyes, sit back, relax.
I'm having a full podcasting experience. Sound of your voice in my ears.
Am I going first? Is that a little tip of the hat to?
I think you are, because my eyes are shut. So,
okay. Oh well, then you are ready. Lean back.
My eyes are shut.
Are you
I can picture you. I have a good visual of you. I feel like I've spent literally at this point years of my life staring at your face, and I love it so much. So I've got a good clear vision.
Okay.
In my mind's eye. Yes.
And here is my voice. I'm going to guide you through this little story.
Oh, delicious dish. Oh, no.
Yeah. So, first of all, I should say right from the start, I got inspired. This tiny little baby spark ignited by my friend Kat Huey, who has been doing this thing on her Facebook page ever since the beginning of her quarantine or stay-at-home order. She has titled her entries on her Facebook page Captain's Log Day 1 or Captain's Log Day 2.
First of all, shout out. Shout out to Kat Huey. Hi.
Shout out to Kat. Kat doesn't even know I'm doing this, so I can't wait to
the best.
tell her.
Surprise, Kat.
Hi, Kat.
And she actually is a listener to the podcast.
She is, and she is actually the best. So that's cool.
And we jump out of a cake shaped like a podcast, and we're like, surprise. But you were saying, so she puts on her daily social media updates?
Yeah, like on her Facebook, it'll just be like Captain's Log Day 1. And it's such a tiny spark, honestly, but it just caught fire inside of me. Like something about like the tone of it just felt like she was embarking on a voyage, and the way that the format, it just distilled down her day, her day's activities, her emotions into like a clear, often bullet pointed list. And it really spoke to me. Like I loved it. It wasn't really about the content. Like I loved what she was writing. Of course, it was all wonderful and quite interesting. But for days after I noticed that she was doing that, I couldn't stop thinking about the format of this captain's log.
I love that.
I just was like, I started asking myself, like, what is it about this captain's log that is sparking me so much? And a couple of things came up. Number one, that I believe in writing my morning pages, like 3 pages of morning, like
you
stream of
playing.
consciousness.
You will get those pages done.
Playing there. So I like to do that. It could be anything from the meaningful to the mundane, but something about the overwhelm lately has, overwhelmed me. Which has been fun. Another thing I thought about, the overwhelm is overwhelming. Isn't it funny that we get used to running on a certain amount of overwhelm, but then there actually is a tipping point when the overwhelm is too much.
It reminds me of like those movies where, I remember commercials, movies, television shows, where all of a sudden the power dumps out in a skyscraper or a city, where it goes and like all the power dumps out and the blocks of lights go click, 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 click off and everything goes dark.
Yes.
That's what happens to me when I run on overwhelm for too long.
That's right. But you can run on overwhelm for a little while. But then there is just a point that's like, nope, we're done with that.
Bye.
So something, like these morning pages, sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, it's like, I don't know. It feels like this captain's log feels like a little bit of taking control by putting my thoughts in an orderly fashion, like
Yes.
bullet pointed, prioritized,
Yes.
capturing like the factual, most relevant, worthy thoughts on paper. There's something
Love
about
it.
that simplification. And then the other thing that struck me, some of this has to do with COVID, I think, some not, but it's like my sense of like my own agency, I mean, I guess I'm always aware of my personal agency, of course, but
Mhm.
in recent months, it's been kind of top of mind. And this was before COVID even, but the phrase, I'm the captain of my ship, has
Yes.
popped up in my mind and come into conversation so many times over the past few months. And it
love
hasn't
that.
stopped popping up even during this pandemic. Yeah, I think I was noticing it's really interesting that thought didn't just go away because there's so many things around me that make me feel powerless right now.
No,
But
I mean, the
instead,
waves of change may be tossing your boat, but you're still the
yes,
captain of your ship. You don't just, yes.
It's, I mean, it just keeps on resonating for me,
Yeah.
being the captain of my own ship. So recently, I think I can share this, Suze, that you and I are taking some business classes together. And in a recent class, someone brought up the idea of wanting to be an entrepreneur because of the control. Working for yourself is appealing because you have control.
Mm-hmm.
And although I felt, I guess, somewhat aligned with what they were saying, I had a slight adjustment. When it was my turn to share, I said, for me, it's more akin to being the captain of my own ship. I can't control the storms that roll in or the height of the waves or the temperature of the water, but I can control how I conduct myself and the decisions I make and the way I lead and the direction we go in.
And the way you respond.
Yeah. Whether or not I keep my face turned towards the sun. All of that is up to me.
This metaphor's got legs, can I just say?
You know what? And we've only just begun.
We've only just scratched the surface of this
begun. So, yeah, as we navigate these uncharted waters, Suze, I mean, I do find myself going back time and again to this analogy and to these nautical metaphors, if you'll forgive a few more.
I
know
bring
that
them on.
They're not revolutionary. They're not new, but it's one of those things where you've been aware of it for a long time. Of course, I've known what a captain's log is for a long, long time, and I find them interesting, of course. But in this particular moment in time, it's rediscovering an old concept, and it feels like it has new life for me right now. And I'm finding a new solace and a new peacefulness in it. And I wanted to explore kind of why is it sparking me? So my spark for today is a deeper exploration of this captain's log, the history and the purpose of it, and what we might learn from the great captains of the sea during this time when we may be feeling adrift.
Camion, you know what I love about this spark? That it really did. It was such a baby. This was just a little tiny baby spark that you were like, I love Cat Huey's daily updates, Captain's Log, Quarantine Day 72. And you were like, I'm interested in that. And it caught that little spark. You caught that little spark and you really are lighting it up. I love it.
It's so fun to do when you're like, this is a little baby. What happens if I let it grow in my mind, and just see where it goes? Will it have a papowie moment, Susan?
Papowie is my favorite word. It continues to be a word used in our house with such fondness and reverence. Papowie.
Me too.
Thank you, Potawatomis. It's really great. Yeah.
Life force. So, all right. So for me to explore this further, first, I had to remind myself, where did this phrase even come from? Of course, I've heard it several times and I vaguely recalled, I think it was from a poem. And it is, but do you remember who it is?
Is it L-O-G? Captain's Log, L-O-G?
Captain's Log, yeah. But do you know what the poem is that I'm the captain of my ship? Do you know this reference?
I know it, but I
can't.
I
know it.
I can't.
I'm going to share.
But I do. Yeah.
I'm going to share it with you because I also was like, what the heck? It's just on the tip of my tongue. but it is from a famous poem called Invictus.
I know this poem.
You know
I
this
love
poem.
this poem.
This
I like.
poem is amazing.
Fantastic.
So this poem was written in 1875 by William Ernest Henley, and he wrote this poem when he was 26 years old. By then, he had already had a pretty damn difficult life. All right, so here I'll read the poem for those of you who don't know it, or maybe you need a refresher. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul.
Oh, yeah.
In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and will find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Oh, Camion.
Blackwell.
I love that poem. Camion, can I just tell you? So I love this gem of lunatics in New York, Mark Fisher Fitness. Love them.
Yes.
Love them. Love everything about them. Love all of the goodness that they have brought into my life and the lives of many others. They have this program where they have increasingly more difficult workouts, and before like the hardest workouts, they would read that poem, and then they would crank the music and you would start to swing your kettlebells.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was sort of, I know, which sounds kind of crazy for a gym, but it was like, like it was so.
It's about getting through the hard stuff.
It's about getting through that hard stuff. And it really is, I feel like, that poem, this spark is great. Sorry, keep going.
Thanks. No. I'm so glad. From what I understand, Nelson Mandela would like recite this poem when he was in prison. I think just to keep his morale alive, to keep his, belief in place that he, in a moment when you feel obviously so powerless. I think that, so this poem, like the language is really bleak, obviously, and violent, but it gives you a sense of what Henley experienced and what he went through. But I did a little deeper dive just to find out of curiosity. Like, he wrote this when he was 26. It sounds like someone who's really been like through the ringer, right?
Yeah. And will you read the first little piece again?
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole.
Okay, that's pretty dark. Yes.
I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. But I think the violent part for me was like, under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed.
Yeah.
Like chance, like, because he really did believe that he was an atheist. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but he believed that all of this was random. So the things that happened to him, and he was bludgeoned by these circumstances of chance, and was not going to be broken by them. But he didn't believe in this concept of like, it's all for a reason. And why is this, like about me in some way? He didn't really take that stance. Yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about what he went through. So as a child, he contracted tuberculosis of the bone.
Oh, and what? Yeah. Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
Tuberculosis in 1875,
it's a thing. Yeah.
I never heard of it. That doesn't sound like it would not be painful.
No, let me tell you more about it. He eventually had to have his leg amputated below the knee when he was around 12. And apparently he went through these long periods of extreme pain because they had to drain the abscesses in his joints that formed due to the tuberculosis.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it just sounds awful.
The abscesses sound awful, and the draining of the abscesses sounds awful.
Yeah, and in 1870 or I don't know, when 1865, when that would have been. Having your leg amputated, I doubt they had some of the painkillers we have and prosthetics we have. Like, I think he really went through it.
Yeah.
But despite being in pain, his brother described him in moments when he would, quote, hop around the room, laughing loudly and playing with zest to pretend that he was beyond the reach of pain.
Oh, my God.
Later, Henley became very good friends with Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island, among other things. And that book introduced us to a character named Long John Silver. In a letter that Stevenson wrote to Henley, he said, "I will now make a confession. It was the sight of your maimed strength and masterfulness that begot Long John Silver. The idea of the maimed man ruling and dreaded by the sound was entirely taken from you."
Oh my God, he was the spark for Long John Silver?
He was the spark for Long John Silver. And Stevenson's stepson described Henley as, quote, "a great, glowing, massive-shouldered fellow with a big red beard and a crutch, jovial, astoundingly clever, and with a laugh that rolled like music. He had an unimaginable fire and vitality. He swept one off one's feet."
Wow.
So it's so interesting to think about like the dichotomy of this person who's in such physical pain, but is like really pushing themselves to be light and laughter and joy.
You know what
and
it sounds like
humor.
to me, though? He was the captain of his soul. Like
He was
really,
the captain of his soul.
He
That's
had
right.
a significant, well-formed sense of personal agency and choice about like how he was going to respond to
the determination,
pain and the challenge.
I mean, it's, to me, it's astonishing, the determination that he had. I mean, it feels somewhat like powering through, but doing it until it becomes who you are. He was someone who was going to enjoy his life regardless. Now, I'm not going to say that he didn't turn and get a little bit darker. He did. So I don't want to create too, jovial of a picture. But
yeah, this isn't Santa Claus to the end.
This is not Santa Claus. So he had other pains in his life that were less about infectious airborne disease, which we're all thinking about now.
Mm-hmm.
But his father died when he was in his 20s. His Henley's only child, he had a daughter, Margaret, and she died from meningitis when she was 5 years old.
Oh, heartbreaking.
There were times in his life when he would spend long stretches of time in the hospital. And by long, I mean like 3 years at a time in the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. One stay was 3 years long. And during that time, he wrote a book of poetry called In Hospital. So from what I can tell, though, it seems that
sorry to interrupt you, but talk about being creative.
Yeah.
Like in a time where I think sometimes people have this mistaken idea that to be creative, you have to be like sort of grounded and peaceful and have the muse sitting on your shoulder and sunlight beaming through the window into your studio. And it isn't that. I mean, if you're, and imagine, so if you've ever loved and lost, had your heart broken, sometimes those are the most creatively fertile periods. And,
that's right.
You experience music and other things in a whole new way.
Different way. Yeah.
And sometimes you're in hospital and you write a book of poetry aptly titled In Hospital. But I just wanted to say that we don't have to wait for these pristine, perfect circumstances to be creative. And I loved that he took his experiences. We talk about this all the time, Camion. If you have to live through it, you might as well make something out of it. And he was doing that. So I love that.
I do too. I really do. And that, given all this that he went through, he wrote, like Invictus, a powerful poem about personal agency and personal choice. So I love that. I think that from what I can tell, it seemed like eventually he grew to be quite angry and bitter, and he would release most of that anger in his work as a literary critic. Apparently, he could be absolutely brutal if he didn't like your work.
No,
I don't think he suffered fools. You know what I mean? I think he was one of those people who was like not having it.
Yes. I'm sorry to hear, though. It sounds like he kind of something shifted in him. And he got a little dark.
I think there's only so much a person can take. But I do think about how his brother described him, like hopping around the room, laughing loudly, and playing with zest to, and I love this phrase, pretend he was beyond the reach of pain.
Yeah.
It makes me think of someone who's like, toughing it out, sucking it up, buttercup. And I commend that choice. If that's what gets you through, that's what gets you through. But I'm also thankful that, we're living in a time when like powering through is not our only choice.
Yes.
In this day and age, I think we're more accepting of feel it, go through it, in ways that, and in particular, men, frankly, weren't always allowed to have their emotions or the feeling of being weak or being perceived as weak or in pain. Like that was a real struggle. Nonetheless, he left us with a metaphor that is incredibly powerful and powerful enough to withstand 150 years and still be something that resonates for all of us. Being the captain of our own fate can be such a scary concept. And I think that over time, many people criticized his poem because he was an atheist, and they felt like he was trying to say that God has no power in this.
Yeah.
That God has no power in this. But I don't actually think those two are.
But if you're saying, is it I am the master of my fate? I am the captain of my soul. Well, that is saying, if you're somebody, this gets complicated and theological really quickly, but if you're somebody who thinks that your fate is being decreed by some higher power, you know what I mean? If you ascribe to that and you have somebody who's boldly declaring in their poetry, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. Like, I can see how people could get snippety about that.
It's an absolute direct threat to their their philosophy and the belief system that they're eschewing. But I think that, in my personal opinion, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive, because I think it's about believing in free will. So regardless of whether or not you believe in God or which God you believe in, if you believe that you were born with free will, then you can be the captain of your fate. You can be the captain of your soul. So I find it interesting, though, that that in my research, a number of religious sites or religious people would, in particular, point out this poem and kind of, write an entire blog post after blog post over, how it's not true and why it's not true. But just for me, I just keep going back to personal agency and, like I said, free will. So if God gave you the ability to make the choice of, how you're going to respond to your circumstances, then that is in fact being the master of your soul. To me, I get to choose how I'm going to react to this situation, this pandemic, or this annoyance at work, or this fight with my parents, whatever it is. I get to choose my next step.
Yeah.
So that leads me back to my captain's log. Since the beginning of time that we know of, since any kind of organized civilization, I should say, ships have kept logs of their locations and the details of their journeys. And these can be called ship logs, deck log, captain's log, or just logbook. They have a lot of names. But essentially, the logbooks are a firsthand account of what went on the ship. So it might be really mundane. It might be the day-to-day details of what the crew did, daily accounts of the weather, but it could also be scientific information gathered during the voyage, meteorological observations, things they encountered when they hit land, like there are a lot of things that we learn from these logbooks. So for centuries, like captains and commanders of all kinds of ships kept these journals and logbooks that help us understand like what life was like during their time.
Yes. And you've talked, this is not the first time we've talked about something similar to this. You did that fantastic Spark about going into the Amazon with Colonel Percy Fawcett and how so much of what we know now about Colonel Fawcett and his journeys was recorded in something similar. I guess it wouldn't be a ship's log necessarily,
but it's a logbook. Yeah. And adventurers and explorers of all kinds, whether they're on water or land or air, kept logbooks.
Today we found a spider the size of a chihuahua. That's
exactly right. And sketches, it might, for those
this is
types
a dog
of explorers.
With 2 snouts.
This is a dog with 2 snouts. Good memory, Suze.
I love that Spark. That is like a gold star Spark to me. If you don't know what we're talking about, Camion did a great Spark on Colonel Percy Fawcett. Is that his name?
That's exactly right. Colonel Percy Fawcett and the Lost City of Z.
Yeah. So go back and check it out because it will blow minds.
So we've learned details of, foreign lands. We've learned details of war from logbooks. We can understand more about like early explorers, ships that traveled from country to country for trade purposes. We learned about diseases and their transport across oceans as they they record the health of the people on board. So you have like this little capsule.
Of course.
And it might be like, Mike Smith, whatever. I couldn't even think of a crew position, but dishwasher Mike Smith came down with the flu and stayed in bed today, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And then you wake up the next day and you're like, 6 more people came down with the flu today.
Interesting.
And you can see, these episodes of disease.
Yeah,
that's right. They even catalog animals and plants that they encounter. So there's a history of botany and biology to be told through logbooks.
Dogs with 2 snouts, etc. Yep.
Did you read Elizabeth Gilbert's book? It's the one about the botanist.
No.
This woman. Yeah, I did. It's a really, really, really enormous book. Like for a novel, it's huge. But her research was intense. I couldn't believe the amount of like botany research, plants, and this woman's.
That's a lot of botany.
It's a lot of botany.
Yeah.
And I've never used the word botany so many times. It's a lot of botany.
Keep going. Botany, botany, botany.
Botany, botany, botany. The more you say it, the less it looks like the word on the page, botany. But anyway, I digress. So the National Archives held many, many logbooks from the history of the Earth. And a few years ago, there was a book called Tales from the Captain's Log. And it's a collection of excerpts from like Captain James Cook, Blackbeard, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, don't you want to know what's in his logbook?
On the Beagle,
I don't know.
From his voyage on the Beagle.
Oh,
that's
good.
the ship. Yes,
I'm so impressed. So impressed.
I really was. Yeah, really pulled that on my butt.
Great and excellent visuals in this episode of the Spark File. So one of the more famous and more modern captain's logs is, of course, from Star Trek. Recently, William Shatner has gotten on Twitter and resumed the mantle of Captain Kirk and reported Captain's Log, Stardate 1 of self-imposed isolation. After having arrived at Planet Home, I was warmly greeted by emissaries Espresso and Macchiato. I look forward to my planned respite from my normal duties. Kirk out. Which I think, like, when I mentioned Captain's Log to anyone, most people were like,
yes.
Oh yeah, like Star Trek. So that's a more recent and more modern take on it. Also, recently, captain of the ship, like, I don't know this whole story. I was just thinking about that the Navy captain that was fired recently.
Yeah.
I bet his captain's log is really interesting.
Ooh, that would be a bestseller.
Yeah, because he was cataloging the disease on his ship, COVID-19, and he was asking for help in various ways, and then eventually went outside of the chain of command and then got fired for doing so. But I think it would be really interesting to read what was happening on that ship.
Can I ask you, in your research, does the captain doesn't have time to write this? Surely it's sort of like an assistant.
There are two different, well, at least two logbooks that I know of. There used to be like one called the ship's log, and certainly the captain didn't write that. That is like every detail of what's going on.
Class secretary writes that. Yeah.
That's right. The class secretary is writing that. The captain, that's why I'm loving like this concept as a journal practice, because the captain would hit on the highlights and the it's top line, basically. Mm-hmm. The captain would be like, here are the essential things that happened, or my observation from my position as the master of this ship. And so as a journal practice for me, it means like, in my position as the master of my soul, here are the observations of the things I see and feel going on around me and within me. Right. So I think for sure that the logbooks, like the captain's log, is always top line.
Interesting. And kept by the captain, it sounds like.
Yes. Another interesting thing for captain's log is that they're not typically overly emotional. They are factual observances. And there's something facts. There's something really interesting about that. I think it might be the key to why I'm drawn to it right now in this particular moment, that it's not about what they were feeling so much as what they knew, so some more concrete things. And maybe that's also why I'm magnetized towards this right now, is that I want to deal with things that I know, because there are so many things that are unknowable right now.
Yes. Facts.
So it's really empowering, and it's been sparking me so much that, of course, obviously I wanted to share it with you and with others. If it sparks you, please feel free to take it and make it. We can all thank Kat Huey for this idea.
Thanks, Kat. I am sparked, I have to say.
What could you make of it, right?
Yes.
What do we make of this? So obviously, your own leather-bound captain's log in using a scroll and ink and scroll, please, like a quill. In a little quill, that's right. If you are writing, if you're a writer, you can use the captain's log quite successfully, like as the narrator. You can see that in
a little writing convention.
Yeah, Star Trek, but Twin Peaks did it with like Agent Cooper's dictaphone. The X-Files, like Mulder and Scully sometimes used it as a device.
Clever.
World War Z, they did it, but sort of in interview form. If you are into history, you can research logbooks. Like, there are incredible tales to tell. Ooh, this is one I learned. This was not on a ship, but I read about, supposedly, like during the race, explorers were racing to kind of claim the South Pole, like the first expedition to get to the South Pole. Yeah. So these two explorers were on separate expeditions, and both of them kept essentially captain logs. One of them arrived there and was credited with discovering the South Pole.
Hooray.
Amundsen, I think. Amundsen was his name. And the other one arrived 1 month later. He and his team were literally devastated to arrive too late.
Wow.
And you have to understand, like, people don't know what else is going on. So you don't know. You're thinking like, we're going to get there. We're going to make it, just survive. We're going to be able to stake our claim on the South Pole, only to find
legacy.
The little souvenir shop came and went because the other guy arrived here a month ago. But hey, good luck to you. But all jokes aside, the second team, they all died on the way back home. all
Wait a
of them.
second.
And
so
I-
not only did they
That's
come
right.
in second,
That's right. They all died on the way home. I have to believe some of that was the spirit, like just the kick in the gut when you are sustaining on fumes anyway.
yeah.
So they all died on the way home. The final entry of the captain's log essentially was last entry, for God's sake, look after our people.
Oh,
And what's so interesting is because captain's logs were not often very emotional,
Yeah.
whenever they do emote, it is super powerful because, you know, this guy in charge isn't typically prone to writing down any superfluous emotional information.
yeah.
So, you know, it's very impactful when they do.
Jeez.
So there's that. A book of poetry called In Pandemic. Just kidding. Take one from Henley. In Hospital, in Pandemic. But I think too soon. Sorry. Really for me, it's about a daily habit of observations. Like,
Yes.
you don't have to be like William Ernest Henley. You don't have to like power through. You can cry when you need to, laugh when you feel like it, even at the absurdity of all of this. Just, it's like checking in with yourself and trying to notate what you need, basically. And this made me think of, you know, the guidance that is often offered when you feel an anxiety attack coming on. I don't know. I feel like you're probably familiar with this, Susan, but when you have an anxiety attack, the way to minimize it is to disrupt your brain. Obviously, it's a similar concept. Disrupt your brain from the monkey mind, from the worry, from lighting up the amygdala. And they say to focus on 5 things you can see, 4 things you can physically feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. So you go through this process of, okay, what are the things in this room that I can see? I can see my hands. I can see the sky. I can see a plant on my desk. 4 things I can feel. I can feel my feet on the ground. I can feel my hair on my neck. You know what I mean? And you are essentially, then you're going further and further inward. I can hear the wind blowing. I can hear the sound of Susan's voice. I can hear the tea kettle boiling.
You know, I've never done this specific exercise. I love this.
I thought you would. Crazily enough, when I started to feel anxiety a couple years ago, pretty intensely, I just learned this little habit, and it really just focuses you in on your physical self, your physical surroundings, and then your inner self, because then you're like 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And for me, I think the captain's log is kind of serving this purpose. Like, what are the things I know to be true? Check in with my body. How am I feeling? What's going on with me physically?
Yes.
What emotional observations? This is not about, like, this isn't my 3 pages of writing about the emotions, but just the observations. Cried for 5 minutes after lunch. Felt tired by 8 p.m. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Slept until 9. So I feel when I'm writing my captain's log for the day, I'm really putting myself in the center of things. I'm behind the wheel in the driver's seat. And it's less about what's happening to me and the emotions that arose from those things. It's more about, what do I see ahead? What storms are on the horizon? Where's the clear water? What decisions will I make to steer myself and my life in the direction that I want to go?
I love this.
So maybe I'm taking this tiny, tiny spark and going too far with it, but I think
it's just right.
It just feels right now. Like, I'm really craving the sense of agency and this feeling of, I am the master of my soul. All of this may be happening. A pandemic may be happening, but I can regulate what I do in these moments
And response.
and how I respond.
So say this one more time. It's 5 things I can
see,
4 things I can
physically feel,
3 things I can
hear,
2 things I can
smell,
and 1 thing I can
taste.
I love this just as a way to come into the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like so much of my anxiety is either casting to the future and
Mm-hmm.
projecting things that are scary movies about what possible outcomes could happen.
That's right. That's
but
right.
a lot of times, this is amazing the way the mind works. Those things that I'm projecting are old things from my past that I've actually lived through, or things that I have seen other people on the news, depicted in movies, etc., that I project into a potential future, and it's not a fun, happy
That's
future.
right.
So it's what you're describing. I like very much because it sort of brings you into the present moment. And when I'm in the present moment, like right now, all is safe and well. And I feel very fortunate.
Yeah.
I can breathe. I am not ill that I know of. So I really appreciate that. And
I'm so happy.
Yeah, I have ideas about this captain's log too. I keep a bullet journal. So I already sort of have my own leather-bound tome that I keep by my side.
Yes.
And I was just thinking, I do a thing where I just do I leave a page in each month for just as things happen. Like, it could be just events that happen. It could be some significant trip that we did, or if somebody passed away, or somebody was born, or we celebrated somebody's birthday, just like these significant events. We went to see a Broadway show. The
Oprah called me.
Oprah called me. The first Papowies of Spring came through, things like that. And I just think, what if it wasn't just like I kept a few things every month, but what if it was what you're describing, which is more like what my friend Mars calls her daily diary, where every single day, at the end of the day, she just does a series of bullet points about what happened that day. And she's done it since she was very young. And she has all of them from her life.
I think that's incredible.
Isn't it amazing? And it's all it's not digital. It's all kept by hand. And I will tell you, in addition to being like, she can tell you if the police knocked on her door and they were like, "Where were you the night of March 23rd?" She can tell you. I don't know if I could, but she could.
I can't account for my time.
Hopefully I was with her on March 23rd because she'll be my alibi. But she also, there have been times when she has had to, for tax, like if she's audited for her taxes, she has used her diary as sort of like, oh, no, see, this is and it's been super useful to her in a bunch of different ways. But I also help her. I think it helps her just mark the passage of time and of life and of changing seasons and the growth of children. And I've just always loved it. I admire it so much as a ritual that she keeps. I love this idea.
I'm so envious of that too, because there's so many rituals that I either think about starting, want to start, or do start. And I have such regret that I didn't start them sooner, and that's kind of a little hump I have to get over always, because to me, that is the fantasy of oh, what if I had been doing this my whole life? And she has been. That's amazing.
Yeah. But you've been doing your morning pages. That's not nothing, girl.
I mean, I go through phases of oh, wow, look at these 5 journals full, and then I do okay.
What do you think? Do you think you're going to start a captain's log and keep it?
Yeah, for sure. I have already, and it will be my journey through pandemic, essentially.
Oh, Cami, and you know what I love about this Sparks on Sparks? Here's what I love. I heard somebody say this, and I loved it. I heard a writer say, if you have ever wanted to write, if that has ever been something that you're like, I wish I wrote, I would love to write, this is a great time to start taking notes. Just start taking notes, because this is historic what we're living through.
Mhm.
It's historic. And so
100%.
start taking those notes because it could be the spark of just something wonderful, lasting, and historic that you could write.
And could be a family heirloom. Like
It could be a
when,
family heirloom.
generations from now, they're like, did our family go through a pandemic? Why, yes, we did. And
Yes.
here is your
And here are the-
grandma's.
and here's your grandma's
notes.
captain log.
This is how they got through it. Playing
Grandma's
Scrabble
captain
by
log.
candlelight.
There you go.
Yeah. So, Sue's trigger warning for cheesy metaphors. Here's my wrap up. Whether you think you're on a journey, an adventure, or a voyage, whether you're on a wooden ship, a sleek sailboat, or maybe you're a monkey driving a speedboat,
Okay.
rather than being adrift at sea, washed up on shore, or bouncing around with the waves, you can decide to be the master of your fate, captain of your soul. We'll even throw you a line. Nerds. This is a podcast for nerds.
Spark, well done.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. I can't wait to hear your spark.
In just a second, we'll be right back. So Camion,
Yeah, Blackwell.
baby cams. I experienced a spark file first, crafting this spark. I was having a conversation with Nathan about this article he had read. It was a 2015 Rolling Stone interview with this artist that we love. And he kept reading me quotes from this article. And I was like, damn, that is a spark. There's another spark. There's another spark. I mean, he was just like, babe, listen to this. And just like, he doesn't really talk like that. Babe, listen to this. I set to work on researching and crafting my little spark about this very sparkish person. In the midst of this, I was like, Nathan, this is a spark. And he was like, I know, baby. That's why I'm telling you this. But then,
I know.
I know. And then I'm crafting the spark. And then just right in the middle of the crafting of the spark, the subject of my spark passed away.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So my spark today is both an exploration and a tribute to my spark subject. And that person was Bill Withers.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was so shocking just because I felt like I was all up in Bill Withers's business. And then I couldn't believe it. I got the news alert on my phone and I was like, are you kidding me, guys? I just couldn't believe it.
I remember that day. And I remember thinking like, this fucking pandemic, like normally the world would at least take a pause and, recognize the lives of people, like Bill Withers in a time, in their, just to recognize their lifetime and their life's work during normal times.
The news cycle is chock-a-block. Yeah. So let us take that time now.
Yes.
So my spark sources include a 2015 Rolling Stone article entitled The Man Who Walked Away by Andy Green, a piece in the New York Times by the poet and cultural critic Hanif Abdurraqib, an obituary written for NPR by Anastasia Tsoulkis, and the 2009 documentary Still Bill. Let us talk about Bill Withers. Born on the 4th of July in 1938, William Harrison Withers Jr. was the son of a coal miner in Slab Fork, West Virginia.
Oh.
I did a little research on Google Maps and I wanted to see if I dropped myself down in Slab Fork, what would that look like? And it really does just look like a little highway, little dinkus rural road with a railroad track to haul coal and sort of some trailer homes and old coal housing. There's a creek, but that's it. There's not a lot there. Bill was one of 13 children in his family.
Wait, back it up.
13 kids, 6 survived infancy.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
His mom
gave birth to 13 children and only 6 survived. That's a lot of loss.
God.
And on top of that, Bill's father died when Bill was just 13 years old. And soon after that, another tragedy struck the family. His older brother, who was he called him his social idol, got hurt in the coal mines. He got crushed by a coal cart. So his older brother wasn't able to work in the mines anymore. And he watched his brother become a mailman. And when that happened, Bill saw a way out of the mines for himself, too. In fact, Bill Withers was the first man in his family not to go into the mines, which is amazing.
Whoa.
Amazing.
So he never himself worked in the mines. Like he
Never
circumvented that,
Yep.
that preordained future, basically.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
Amazing. So then Bill grew up with a stutter. He had it from childhood all the way into adulthood. He said he had a very hard time fitting in. These are his words. When you stutter, people have a tendency to disregard you. In the 2009 documentary, Still Bill, he talked about how there were all these dumb folk remedies people would try. Like if he stuttered, he would get hit in the face with a dish towel, which sounds,
God.
I know, awful. He also said he had a teacher and others who disparaged his intelligence and his capabilities because of his stutter, which he did not like at all. Then there was the racism that was a way of life in his youth. To give you some context, his grandfather was born into slavery.
Oh my God.
Yeah. His grandfather was an enslaved person until slavery was abolished when his grandfather was 9 years old.
Whoa.
Think how close, think of your own grandfather. Think how close that feels, and to have that be the reality.
But it's not surprising. But he was born in what, 1938? I mean, you're still a long ways away from, you know, an integrated society in any way.
Aren't we still? Bill said, one of the first things I learned when I was around 4 was that if you made a mistake and go into a white woman's bathroom, they're going to kill your father. That was one of the first things he learned when he was 4, just to give you sort of like an idea of the culture that he was born into.
That's right.
He was also a teenager when Emmett Till was beaten to death by 2 men who were cleared of all charges by an all-white jury. So if you're not familiar with the story, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old from Chicago who allegedly whistled at a white woman while visiting relatives in Mississippi. That's it.
God.
And that was alleged. So that was in the air. Around that time, Bill said, Till was right around my age, and I thought, didn't he know better? But you know, he allegedly whistled at a white woman. But that's what was in the air, and that was what was in the culture at that time.
That's very much like keep your head down, don't make eye contact, just try to get through the world without getting yourself into trouble. And it would be perceived as you getting yourself into trouble as opposed to, you know, someone.
The thing that's interesting to me about him growing up in that culture is I think it informed the way he navigated other chapters in his life and what he would not tolerate, which, you know, I respect that and enjoy
100%. I mean, all of that, you don't witness that and not have it like ingrained in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was desperate to get out of Slab Fork. And right after graduating from high school in 1965, he enlisted in the Navy. And though Harry Truman had desegregated the armed forces 8 years earlier, Withers discovered that didn't mean much at his first naval base in Pensacola, Florida.
Yeah.
He said, my first goal was I didn't want to be a cook or a steward, so I went to aircraft mechanic school. I still had to prove to people that thought I was genetically inferior that I wasn't too stupid to drain the oil out of an airplane. You know, but he knew, like I feel like... I don't know.
He had an awareness. I feel like he did a lot of observing in his youth. He saw and felt it all and stored that away. You know, he was just incredibly perceptive.
Yes,
you know?
I think you're right. He was he seemed like a very sensitive person and very perceptive. So by the time the Navy transferred him to California in the mid-60s, he realized he would never have the courage to quit the Navy if he could not get rid of his stutter. He said he still couldn't get a word out, and he realized it wasn't physical. He said, I figured out that my stutter, and this isn't the case for everyone, was caused by fear of the perception of the listener. I had a much higher opinion of everyone else than I did of myself. I started doing things like imagining everybody naked, all kinds of tricks I used on myself. I actually relate deeply to this. I was like so sparked by Bill Withers on so many counts. And one of them is that feeling personally from growing up in a sort of a rural environment and just not having some of the advantages and privileges that I perceived other people had. I had a much higher opinion of everyone else than I did of myself. I really related to him. I really related to him saying that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And there's always space for someone else to speak, but not for you.
Yeah. And just how I personally would subjugate myself to other people and just assume that they were smarter than me and more sophisticated than me.
I thought that way. Growing up in Kansas, it was like, oh, well, that person is from either the East Coast or the West Coast. And so they know more and they're more
superior.
Experienced and they're more talented and everything. Yeah.
But
Can I give you just one more little story about stuttering that could apply to Bill? But Wes had a stutter when he was young.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I'm not. His sweet mom, Betty Day, who I love so much, sweet Betty Day.
Hi, Betty.
Hi, Betty. She took him into a speech therapist, and they worked with him for like one session, and they asked him a question like, what is do you know what this is? And he's like, it's a bird. And they're like, can you tell me everything you know about birds? And he talked and talked and talked all about what he knew about birds, and not a single stutter. And the therapist came back to Betty, and she knew like Wes's siblings and their big personalities and big talking. And she said, Betty, I think that there's not space for Wes was the youngest. He was a little kid. And like, let's say at the dinner table, everyone's loud and talking over each other. And when he would try to talk, she said, like, I don't think like he's trying to get a word in there and he can't. So I want to encourage you to like find some space for him to contribute to the conversation. So sweet Betty Day did exactly that. And she would be like, y'all shut up. It's Wes's turn to talk. And sure enough, when he had space, he spoke just fine. And the stutter went away. And I think about Bill because as one of 6 kids, you got to imagine he was like fighting to try to get
and he was the youngest.
And he's the youngest.
Yeah.
So I just offer that as well. Like you got to make some space for the kids.
I actually have in my Spark file for another day is about stuttering. I'm very sparked by this topic. Yeah. So spoiler alert. But I think that it's Bill Withers makes the point in the documentary Still Bill that stutters are almost like fingerprints, and each person has their own distinct way of stuttering. And there's sort of not a one size fits all reason for it or solution to it. So, but that's another Spark for another day.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
that's
love
a
that story about
preview of
Wes.
a Spark file to come. I do too. And I love Betty because Betty, she's a steel magnolia. And she was like, y'all shut up and give some space to Wesley.
I love that. Well, I'm happy to report that Bill Withers cured himself of his stutter.
Incredible.
And in 1965, he quit the Navy and he became the first Black mailman in Santa Clara County, California. He eventually took a job at an aircraft parts factory, and his job was installing toilets and toilet seats in commercial airplanes. And as a
Wow.
Navy aircraft mechanic, he was ridiculously overqualified for the job he was doing, but he said it was all about survival, which having a dad who worked in a factory, amen, Bill Withers.
Yes. Amen, Bill Withers. And can I just say, talk about being the master of your own fate. Here's a person who redirected his life in some, away from something that seemed almost predisposed or like a certain future that he was going to be working in the coal mines. He circumvented that. He learned engineering. He became a mailman. He taught himself how not to stutter. I mean, this is a guy who's like, I'm going to grab things, by the balls and do
get
it
ready,
myself.
Cami, and strap in because here's a big one.
Okay.
So one night around that time, Bill Withers visited a club in Oakland where Lou Rawls was playing, the famous singer. And Bill Withers tells this story that Lou Rawls was late and the manager was pacing back and forth nearby to where Bill Withers was seated. And Bill said, I remember him saying, I'm paying this guy $2,000 a week and he can't show up on time. Bill Withers said, I was making $3 an hour looking for friendly women, but nobody found me interesting. Then Rawls walked in and all these women are talking to him. So by that time, Withers was in his late 20s. His music business experience consisted of like a couple of times sitting in with a bar band when he was stationed in Guam with the Navy. He had never played the guitar, but he headed to a pawn shop, bought a cheap guitar, and began teaching himself to play.
Oh my God.
Yes. Between shifts at the factory, he began writing his own tunes. And he said, I figured out that you didn't need to be a virtuoso to accompany yourself. I love this. It reminds me of my dad writing poetry between his, like on his breaks at the factory.
Yes.
Like it's almost like a plant growing through a crack in the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That it's just sort of like creativity will grow up and out. I love it.
Yes, it will. Life finds a way.
Yeah, he began saving from each paycheck until he had enough to record a crude demo, and he shopped it around to all the major labels. They weren't interested, but then he got a meeting with a Black music executive named Clarence Avant, who had recently founded an indie label called Sussex. And Clarence Avant gave him a deal and set him up with the famous Stax keyboardist Booker T. Jones, and Booker T. Jones produced Bill Withers' first album.
Oh my God.
This is crazy. Booker T.
God.
Jones used all of his contacts and he hired the best musicians on the Los Angeles scene at the time, including Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young on guitar. And Booker T. Jones tells the story that Bill came in right from the factory. He showed up in his old brogans, his old like leather work boots and his, I love this, and his old clunk of a car with a notebook full of songs. And when he saw everyone in the studio, he asked to speak to Booker T. Jones privately. And he said, Booker, who's going to sing these songs? And Booker said, you are, Bill. He was expecting some other vocalist to show up.
Oh my God.
And Bill was extremely uneasy until Graham Nash walked into the studio, famous musician, Graham Nash.
Yes.
And Graham Nash sat down in front of Bill Withers and said, you don't know how good you are. Bill Withers said, I will never forget it. In a few days, they laid down the basic tracks for what became Bill's first album, Just As I Am, released in 1971.
Oh my
Camion,
God.
here's a little spark for you.
My God.
Just a little spark. I know this is, I love Bill Withers. Love the music, love the man, love the stories about the man. Here's a spark for you. So Bill was watching the 1962 Jack Lemmon, Lee Remick movie, Days of Wine and Roses on TV. And it's the story. Did you ever see that movie, the black and white film?
No, I know of it.
I know of it too, and I'd never seen it. But it's the story of two young, bright people, and they fall in love and they start drinking together and they develop a very serious addiction to alcohol. So the doomed relationship in the film brought a phrase to Bill's mind. Here's the spark. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Yes. So Ain't No Sunshine is on Bill's first album, Just As I Am. Camion from Across the Miles. Do you have a web browser open? Will you please Google
Sure.
Bill Withers, Just As I Am, and look at the record cover, which we will also share on social media at the Spark File. This is
Doing
the
it
album
right
cover for
now.
As I Am. This
Oh my
photo was taken
gosh.
during Withers' lunch break, leaning on a wall outside of Weber Aircraft where he worked, lunchbox in his hand. Bill said, "My coworkers were making fun of me. They thought it was a joke." So even the cover of his
Wow.
album taken at the factory.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I love him so much.
And Just As I Am is as authentic as it gets. Like
Just As I
that
Am.
title, and then he delivers on every level of like, and this is it right here.
Yes.
It's Just As I Am.
I think authentic is, yeah. That's the word for it. So, still unconvinced that music would pay off, he held on to his day job until he was laid off in the months before the album's release. Then he said, one day, 2 letters came in the mail. One was asking me to come back to my job, and the other was inviting me to appear on Johnny Carson. The Tonight Show appearance in November 1971 helped propel Ain't No Sunshine into the top 10, and the follow-up, Grandma's Hands, reached number 42. Bill Withers at that time was 32 years old. Yes,
Oh.
Bill Withers. I think this is why I feel so sparked by Bill Withers. He comes from this background of natural growth. He didn't
Yes.
have a leg up. He didn't start
Yes.
writing or even playing an instrument until he was an adult. He was working at a blue-collar job while he was also taking a swing at being creative, which again reminds me so much of my dad. But
Yeah.
somehow Bill Withers knew that the Golden Palace is anywhere you make it. It's anywhere you make anything you want to make. And to me,
That's right.
he and his music are evidence of that. He gives someone like me hope and a sense of what is possible. And I love him and his music for
Oh
that.
my God.
I love it.
I do
You're-
too.
Yes.
There's something also to this mindset that I feel like I constantly work to get back to. There's a mindset of sometimes when you don't know what you don't know and you're fine with it. You're like, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
And your mind isn't telling you like, but do you know how unlikely it is that you're going to get that album made and how unlikely it is that you're going to get on Johnny Carson and how all the stars have to align for you
Yeah.
to blah, 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 and all that voice.
Yeah.
Fuck it. You know,
Yeah.
there's like, if we can remain in that mindset to like, why not? Why not
Uh-huh.
me? Why can't I be on
Yeah.
Carson?
This is an interesting why not me? This is interesting. Years
Mhm.
later, Bill still marveled that he was able to come out of nowhere at that age. And he said, imagine 40,000 people at a stadium watching a football game. About 10,000 of them think they can play quarterback. Maybe 3 of them probably could. I guess I was one of those 3. So, but I love that he was really operating under that why not me? And just
Why
kept
not me?
putting one foot in front of the other, learning, teaching himself writing, and he kept going while working.
Lou Rawls can do it and
Yeah.
show up late and get all the
Yeah.
ladies. Why not me?
Why not me? So then Bill Withers took some of his earnings. He bought a piano and again, with no training, began fiddling around.
Oh,
One of the
come
first things he
on.
came up with was this very simple chord progression. He says, I didn't change fingers. I just went 1, 2, 3, 4, up and down the piano. It was the
Ah.
first thing I learned to play. Even a tiny child can play that. He said, tired of love songs, he wrote a simple ode to friendship called Lean on Me. And if you think about it, bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum. Yes. Yeah. It's
Bum,
not, we
bum.
talk about this
Yeah.
all the time. Sometimes when people think about creativity, they think it has to be the Sistine Chapel. They think that it
Mhm.
has to be this like very complex or professional or like takes years of, now sometimes it does take years of craft, but sometimes you can just express yourself and write your
Mhm.
heart out and you come up with Lean on Me.
But sometimes we discredit anything that comes too easily. And so
Yes.
if it didn't, if it wasn't years of blood, sweat, and tears, then it must not be anything special. And that's so frankly incorrect. As
But
something
also-
can spring forth from you that is simply
Yeah.
beautiful.
It seems though at this time he was really making time and had a pretty consistent, disciplined practice. So I don't want to he was really committed to making stuff. So I don't want to shortchange that either. But I love it. I just love this. An Ohio-based poet and cultural critic named Hanif Abdurraqi wrote a beautiful piece in the New York Times after Bill Withers passed. In it, he said that Lean on Me was written after Bill moved to Los Angeles and longed for everyone he loved back in West Virginia. That was his spark, that longing, which there you go. Sparks are everywhere, people. Withers didn't think much of the song, but he said that the guys at the record company thought it was a single, and it became the centerpiece of his second album, 1972's Still Bill. The song went all the way to number 1 and was inescapable for the entire year.
And years later.
And years to come.
Years beyond.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So something I may have referred to on the podcast, we refer to it all the time when we talk about writing and creativity, is the concept of penny words. There's even this piece called Penny Words in the show Now Hear This. This concept is when you're writing something, if you have a choice between like a $5 or $10, $20 word, like a really fancy SAT word, or you could use like a penny word, a nickel word, a dime word, which is to say just like a smaller, simpler, even more common word. I vote always choose the penny word. Now, sometimes the $20 SAT word is exactly what you need. It's the perfect, irreplaceable word. But if there is a small word, a word with fewer syllables, a simple word that gets the job done, I say go with the penny word. And I feel like that's where Bill Withers just crushes it. If you look at a song like Lean on Me, the words with the most syllables are sometimes, sorrow, and tomorrow. And check out the chorus, Laura Camion. Listen to this. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. This is some great songwriting. And in the chorus, the two longest words are carry and somebody. Penny words, people. Yes, Bill Withers. Yes.
Amazing.
Love it.
And also speaks to authenticity. You know, it's not trying to put on some big fancy words. He's just speaking from the soul.
The other thing, it just bears mentioning, that voice. I love that voice. Oh my God, I love that voice. Okay. So by 1972, I mean, when you marry those words with that voice.
That's right.
Yeah. It's quality.
Yep.
So by 1972, with Still Bill and the single Lean on Me, Withers was a hot commodity. He was appearing on Soul Train and the BBC and headlining a show at Carnegie Hall that was released as a live album. But he refused to hire a manager, insisting on overseeing every aspect of his career, from producing his own songs to writing the liner notes to designing his album covers. He said, early on, I had a manager for a couple of months, and it felt like getting a gasoline enema. He does have a way with words. Nobody had my interest at heart. I felt like a pawn. I like being my own man. I respect it.
Yes.
I respect it. I respected Bill Withers.
Yes.
He also, Bill Withers was also unhappy on the road. He had these enormous radio hits. He was opening up for acts like Jethro Tull. Listen, I'm no concert promoter, but that seems like kind of a different audience to me.
Who thought of that?
Somebody, Jethro Tull, flute rock. He was making less money than he felt he deserved. And then his label went bankrupt in 1975. So Withers signed a 5-record deal with Columbia. And you would think, wow, a 5-record deal with Columbia. Fantastic. But Bill said, I met my A&R guy, and the first thing he said to me was, I don't like your music or any Black music, period.
Ooh.
Come on. Bill said he was proud of himself that he did not hit him. I'm proud of you too, Bill. I might have taken a swipe.
Whoa.
Yeah. He met another executive who was looking at a photo of the Four Tops in a magazine. And this record executive actually said to Bill, look at these ugly N-words, except the guy didn't say N-word. Can you imagine facing that kind of blatant racism aimed at you so casually?
No.
Or I guess I should say, I can only imagine it. I can only imagine it, what that must have been like.
And you have to give 5 albums of your personal music to these people? No.
Oh, God. So at his prior label, he had complete creative control over his music. But at Columbia, he found himself in the middle of this large corporation that was giving him notes and quoties advice about what he should be writing and what he should be recording. And when he talks about this chapter in his life, he gets really emotional. He said, there were no Black executives. They'd say shit to me like, why are there no horns in this song? Or why isn't this intro longer? When he had a huge hit with Ain't No Sunshine that has no intro. It just reminds me of all those examples we've seen of creative adjacent people justifying their existences, by giving you a lot of notes.
And a lot of misdiagnoses.
Yeah, but you got to remember, the music business and Bill Withers met when Bill was in his 30s. He was a fully formed adult.
That's
said,
right.
I was socialized as a regular guy. I never felt like I owned it or it owned me. And I was like, there's something to that. Coming into your creativity and coming into your creative success, like later in life. Yeah. So on the mantle in his home, Bill Withers had Grammys for Ain't No Sunshine from 1971, Lean on Me from 1972, and 1980's Just the Two of Us. A few years after Just the Two of Us, Bill Withers became one of the few stars in pop music history to fully and truly walk away from a lucrative career entirely of his own volition and never look back. In the 2015 interview in Rolling Stone, Bill said, these days, I wouldn't know a pop chart from a Pop-Tart. Yeah. It's not that he wasn't addicted to anything. There wasn't a scandal. There wasn't like a health scare. He was like, bye. Because he wasn't feeling it.
And that was in 1980, you said? So it was a total of 1 decade of his life, essentially, was his music career. He did that and then walked away.
By his count, it was 8 years.
Yep. Oh my God.
I think he was like, y'all need to go fuck yourself, which I really admire. I feel like so many of us feel like we have to tolerate some serious bullshit because we're afraid that we won't be able to achieve our creative dream if we don't put up with it from people who are like in charge, quoties and in charge, but not Bill. And I admire that so much.
Wow.
For years after he walked away from Columbia, Bill Withers didn't release a note of music aside from a guest spot on a 2004 Jimmy Buffett song. As of 2015, he had not performed publicly in concert in nearly 25 years. But what he did do was spend a lot of time being a dad to his 2 kids, Todd and Corey.
Aww.
And yep. His daughter, Corey, who's also a beautiful singer-songwriter, said, we'd have James Brown dance parties in our pajamas and we'd take cross-country road trips blasting Chuck Berry songs the whole time. Corey said that growing up listening to her father's songs was the most peaceful space she had as a child. She said that he kind of spoke in little poems like "The sky is blue and I'm happy to see you," or "Quit crying and start trying." And also that he would say, "Get a pencil and write this down," when he came up with a little idea. He would even call his adult daughter and say, "I was thinking of this, make a note of it." And sometimes, she says, sometimes those things made it into Songville, meaning they made it into fully formed songs.
Yes.
Corey said she's sure that her mom has many pieces of paper with Bill's ideas, a thought, 2 lines on them, which tickled me so much because I thought, oh my God, the keepers of Bill Withers' Spark file were his family. I'd never heard of that. I never thought of that.
Oh
that you would be
God.
like, Corey, take a note. I thought that was great.
That is so excellent. And I'm so happy to know that his ideas and his thoughts lived on in some way, whatever shape they took with his family.
Yeah.
So be it. But he got them out
Yes.
into the world.
Ongoing. Yeah. So
Ugh.
he really seemed to be in a great partnership with his wife, Marcia, who is another spark. He said he learned the whole family thing from his wife, Marcia, because his father had died so young.
Right.
Marcia, who met Bill in 1976, ran Bill's publishing company from a tiny office on Sunset Boulevard. Bill described it as a mom and pop shop and described Marcia as his only overseer. He said, and this is a spark for me, I'm lucky I married a woman with an MBA. I feel like when a relationship is healthy, there is something so powerful about a family run creative business. I know a few people who do this, and when it's healthy, it's powerful because there's so much trust there and there's so much, I don't know. I just think it's great. I just love seeing the way they interact with each other and the trust between them. I just loved it. And dig this. This makes me so happy. Since Withers was the sole writer of most of his material, he earned half of every dollar his catalog generated. And Lean On Me alone has appeared in innumerable TV shows, movies, commercials. Any licensee that wanted to use Withers' master version of one of his songs required that family's approval. So get into that. And here's another good spark. Here, listen to this, artists. Bill and Marcia invested wisely in LA real estate. They bought their home in 1998 for $700,000. It was now worth many times that. And because of the skills he learned early on, remember Bill working as an airline mechanic, working in a factory, he was able to do work and construction projects on his own investment properties. So he was, I don't know. I love them. I love Bill and the whole Withers family. He was
his own man. It was exactly as he said. I want to be my own man.
He said he turned down more offers for comeback tours than he could count. What else do I need to buy? He said, I'm just so fortunate. I've got a nice wife who treats me like gold. I don't deserve her. My wife dotes on me. I'm very pleased with my life, how it is. Cam's, like I said, his career lasted 8 years by his count. And in that time, he wrote and recorded some of the most loved, most covered songs of all time, particularly Lean On Me and Ain't No Sunshine. Tunes that feature what Rolling Stone writer Andy Green described as dead simple, soulful instrumentation and pure melodies that haven't aged a second. Andy Green, well put. Questlove of The Roots said, he's the last African-American everyman. Bill Withers is the closest thing Black people have to Bruce Springsteen. And I was like, Questlove, I'm feeling that. I think there's some truth to that. But I also think that Bill Withers is also his own thing. No comparison necessary. And what I know about Bruce Springsteen, when I saw Bruce Springsteen do his show on Broadway, he talked about all that stuff about like, I'm driving a car on dirt roads after dark and working in the factory. He didn't work in a factory. He didn't work in a factory. He didn't have a driver's license. He was talking about his father's experience. He was writing from the point of view, the character of his father. Bill Withers was writing from the point of view of his own experience. So, not to take anything away from Bruce Springsteen, but I'm sort of like, maybe Bruce Springsteen is the white Bill Withers. Huh? Nothing against. He's also, good job, Bruce Springsteen. You're doing okay. I think he's going to be okay. Yeah. So in 2015, Bill Withers was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Stevie Wonder was the person who inducted him. And in his speech, Stevie talked about how he wished he had written those great songs. Me too, Stevie. And how relatable they were. He's talked about how a song like Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone is at face value about how when that special person you love is gone, you feel incomplete, but how it can reflect the feelings around a current event. The year before Bill Withers' induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Chibok schoolgirls had been kidnapped by an Islamic extremist terrorist organization. And Stevie Wonder talked about how the song felt relevant to how the parents of those girls must feel. And I think Stevie's right because of the way the songs are written, because of their authenticity and their, like the penny words of it all. There's a universality about them, and we can all project our own experience onto them. I just think it's brilliant.
Yep.
This is what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame website says about Bill Withers. A masterful lyricist and brilliant vocalist who made emotional connections with listeners on friendship, family, and vulnerability. His timeless songs have been covered and sampled by hundreds of artists, from Aretha Franklin and Michael Jackson to Mary J. Blige and Willie Nelson. This is what Bill Withers said about Bill Withers. I'm not a virtuoso, but I was able to write songs that people could identify with. I don't think I've done bad for a guy from Slab Fork, West Virginia. And that is why Bill Withers is my spark for today. Bill Withers, I'm so thankful for you. And I hope you rest in peace.
Oh, God, Suze, that was a great spark.
It sparks me, Cams, as just like a little dirty, rural, blue-collar girl.
Yes.
I cannot tell you how much hope somebody like Bill Withers gives me.
That's right. He wrote his own destiny. He like at every turn.
That's exactly right.
He did it his way. He did what he wanted to do in the way he wanted to do it.
Thank you, Bill Withers. We love you.
I'm sparked
and
by that.
I send love to his family. I can't imagine the loss that they must be feeling. I can't even imagine.
I'm with you.
But let's go listen to those albums. Ooh, are they good?
Lovely Day, right? Lovely Day.
Oh, a lovely day. What that song is
Lovely Day.
That is a happy song. Put that on in the morning. That'll make you feel
Wes
good.
will sing that around the house.
Canyon, I think that's it.
That's it. I'm full to the brim of sparks.
Me
and
too,
gratitude.
Captain's Log. We hope that this put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that, won't you email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you must share a creative risk that you've taken recently.
And you can follow us on social media at The Spark File, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, rate, 5-star review it. If you like this podcast, it would be so excellent of you to share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, I don't know why in God's name you are still listening. Go do something else.
That's right. And if something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to wash those hands up right. You got to go fly a homemade kite. You got to write yourself the next club hit and dance all night.
You got to take it and make it. Bye. Bye, everybody.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I wanna make or how I wanna be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the chief creative officer and chief marketing officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk, go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.